TechSpective podcast. My guest this week is Erkang Zheng. Erkang, if you could give a little background on yourself and your company.
Yeah, of course. Well, Tony, thank you for having me. Very excited to share a little bit of my story and JupiterOne story here with everyone. I'm the founder and CEO of JupiterOne. JupiterOne, or J1 for short, as we call it, is a cybersecurity software platform, software as a service. It is essentially a data platform for cyber asset management and analysis, and it is the foundation for modern cybersecurity programs for tech-enabled companies in various industries, financial services, fintech, and biotech, and so on and so forth. And I myself has been a cybersecurity practitioner and former CISO for the past 20-something years throughout my entire career. And I built J1 to solve a lot of my own challenges as a practitioner and hoping to have a operating system or a centralized platform that the entire cybersecurity program can anchor on, from a data-driven, engineering-driven approach to answer all sorts of questions based on the visibility and the analysis that we can do throughout the entire technology stack and assets in the digital operations.
Okay, so that part is always a little bit fascinating to me. Is the kind of the origin story, so to speak, is
Sure.
and especially when when you're doing something that's innovative. But I think anyone who's a founder, anyone who decides, hey, I'm going to start a company, does so because they think they have an innovative solution. Like they see a problem and they think that they have a solution for that. I mean, I think it's there are probably examples out there of companies who are just like, hey, I see that company is doing a thing, let's just copy them. I'm sure they exist, but for the most part, I think that a founder sees a problem and tries to solve it. And some of the conversations I've had, even in other podcasts this year, have been with founders who were previously managers or executives in companies that were related. There was like they're not direct competitors, but it was a similar thing, and it was basically that they were in a position where they could see the tech landscape and say, okay, well, the company I'm at is doing this, but I really think we need to be doing this, and then they leave and start their own thing. Right. Sounds like similar to what you described, that there was you saw this, you saw that there was a problem or a need, and I guess I'd be curious to know sort of a little bit more, like, what was the need that you saw? Like a lot of companies now talk about visibility, comprehensive visibility. You can't fix what you can't see. All of those kind of things like that. Everyone has adopted those mantras. Sure. But what was the problem that you set out to solve?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So let's start with the mantra of you can't protect what you can't see, right? So of course, I mean, when you say it out loud, it's pretty obvious, right? But what does that mean, right? So as with anything, right? So it's always the devil's in the details. Right. So really it's two things, right? So what is it that you are trying to see? So that's question number one, right? Because you say, you can protect what you can see, but what is it? What are you trying to see? What are you trying to have visibility to? And second is, now what does that mean, right? So once you see it, what does that mean? You see something, do you really understand it, right? So let me just touch on two things, right? So, let's think about the evolution of cyber and cybersecurity, and in comparison to the evolution of IT and technology in general, right? So we have seen digital transformation, we have seen cloud adoption, we have seen all of these great technologies, and the latest trend being AI and all those stuff, right? So the technology is evolving and moving and at a evolutionary speed that we have never seen before, right? It's constantly at that speed, and every organization is becoming a digital organization through digital transformation and all these initiatives, regardless of the industry and size. It's just how, when, and how fast do you get there? Now, on the other hand, right, so cyber or cybersecurity has always been sort of this kind of counterpart to IT and engineering and technology, but it feels like it's always catching up and being reactive, right? So engineering technology has been through DevOps and all of these automation first and data-driven engineering approach to all the things that they're building. But security has a little bit been behind with these IT-driven, analyst-driven, and administrations, type of approach, right? Then you become sort of the blockers of things, right? And then if you think about the job of the CISO, it has been expanded so much over the past couple of years. It used to be an IT function, right? So to help protect the systems and the technology, and then it has to do with a lot of the compliance, right? I see your book behind you, PCI compliance, right? So that's just one of them, right? But then then it also evolves into a risk management and the business enabling function across the board, across the entire business and the entire technology. So now if you take all of these into consideration, so what is it that you're having visibility to? Is it your IT systems? Not really. Is it the business? Yes. Then what does that mean, right? So now think back that a business is a digital business, is a technology business now, right? So what that means is that the visibility you need is the entirety of that digital transformation stack. Right. So your entire digital function from IT to engineering to code to applications to user to SaaS to digital identities to policies and access. And of course, the traditional stuff, the networks and the servers and the endpoints and all of those things. Right. And you have to combine all of those and think about, we used to have CMDBs, configuration management databases, right? But they're very static for IT. Right now, on the flip side, you have this, ever-changing, very dynamic digital infrastructure for your business, for your organization. So that's what we need. That's the visibility that we have to have. It's that complete stack for your digital and cyber operations. So that's first. And the second part is, I mentioned, okay, then what, right? So what? Now you see those things, and so what? Because a lot of, you're saying something about, there are other very similar offerings and products and companies out there, right? But what I would draw the key difference is that you can have visibility and then the so what. Having visibility is a means to the end, is not the end. You need to be able to understand and digest and consume and then use that to turn that into insights to do something. You probably are familiar with this pyramid that has data to knowledge to insight to wisdom, right? So this pyramid, how do we go up that pyramid? Most products even provide the ones that do visibility, they do the consolidation of data to provide quote unquote visibility, but they don't provide you the insights. They don't provide you the wisdom for you to understand what that data means to you. Now, what's missing? What's missing is the context, right? So that's what we do differently with J1 is when we bring that complete, and again, the complete data set that describes your cyber operations, your digital operations, and all the assets and configurations and attributes and risks and findings, we then connect the dots so that the context is in the relationships, right? So let me give you a simple example. So Tony, you're a podcast host, and I'm the founder of a tech startup. And individually, there's a set of attributes that describe you. There's a set of attributes that describe me, but nothing that describes how do we know each other? How are we connected? Why are we talking today, right? And that's the relationship. That's the context. So J1 has the complete data set and the context. So that people using that data not just have visibility, they have understanding, they have insights, and they can use that as a means to the end to actually accomplish something, be compliance or operations or prioritization or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you talk about the pyramid, there's a segment of companies out there that do comprehensive asset inventory. I'm gonna scour the network. I'm gonna find everything that has an IP address, and I'm gonna give you this. Here's a database. Here's all the things on your network. And that's kind of the bottom of the pyramid in terms of visibility. It's like, yes, you've told me all the things on my network. I think, and I always do throw a little monkey wrench in there of the, okay, but you don't know what you don't know. Like, as you could say you're as comprehensive as you want, but there's no way you can't prove a negative. So there's no way to know if there's still something outside of that, outside of that view. But that's layer one. Then you have companies that come along and say, okay, well, and this is a different sector, but you could, come along and say, well, I'm going to do vulnerability management. So now I'm going to tell you, all the things in your network. Here's all the ones that have problems. But again, that's better. It's a step above, but it's not good enough still, because to your point, it's still missing the context. It's like, I don't just need to know that XYZ server has this vulnerability. I need to know what's on XYZ server, who's using XYZ server, what is the XYZ server connected to, if it did get hacked, what would the impact be? What are the potential, dominoes that fall after that, and all of those things. You need the whole picture of what, so knowing that it's there,
so what,
knowing that it's vulnerable, and then knowing, like, okay, but why do I care?
Exactly. Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit, right? So you're hitting on two very important things, right? So one is the visibility of what's visible, right? Two is the context, right? So just going back to, even if I were able to scan the entire network, right? But now the digital operations are so much beyond the network. A lot of those are software defined. They're not even on the network. They don't have an IP address, right? So just say in the cloud, you have a data store is an S3 bucket. It does not have an IP address. It's software defined. It has an endpoint that you can access, via the internet or via some applications and so on, right? And there's a user identity, and there's a code repository, and there is an access policy, and there are all these things that do not have IP addresses associated. They are not on your network. You can go scan them, but you're not going to find them, right? So first is we have to be able to aggregate in completeness all of these resources or entities and their attributes and configurations and so on and so forth from your entire operations, right? So that's step one, not just the network. You can scan the network, great, right? But then on the other hand, right, so you talk about vulnerability management and prioritization of these findings. We've seen this industry evolve, right? So, but just over the past 20 plus years, I have yet to see a company that come back and tell us I have fewer number of findings than I had last year. Never happens. There's always more. The business is more complex. You got more stuff going on. You got more attackers, and you have more, vulnerabilities being discovered, right? There's always more. Right, but you don't always have more resources. You don't always have more funding, right? You certainly don't have more time. So how do you deal with it, right? So that's where the second part comes in, the context, right? The context then is how do we associate critical findings, which the scanner will tell you, right? They're rated critical, they're rated high, but there's still like thousands of them, sometimes hundreds of thousands of them, right? Then how do you compare that or connect the dots to the assets that are critical? And now let's think about, how do you define an asset that is critical? It is the business context. It is the blast radius. It is the users who have access to it. It is the data that resource has access to, the classification of the systems, and so on and so forth, right? There's a set of contextual criteria that define why an asset is critical versus another one that is less critical. So if we can codify that in a data-driven way, right, using a centralized system that, again, has the aggregation of everything and the relationships and the context, so that we can actually define a subset of the assets as critical, then we connect the dots to the findings that are critical on those critical assets, then that's how you prioritize. Right? And when something happens, whether it's proactively I've identified a vulnerability, or reactively there's an incident, there's an alert on a particular resource, then I can immediately know, is it critical? And what is the blast radius? Who can I go talk to help solve this problem, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. One of the things you kind of threw in there earlier as the kind of an aside, but is the big trend obviously this year is with AI, and more specifically generative AI, and everyone's Chat GPT, and there's a website someone pointed me to called Futurepedia, and it just is like a database of like all of the AI tools that are out there, and it's just insane, how fast all of that's growing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
At the same time, a lot of that comes back to like pretty much every company at this point, because it's the hot buzzword, everyone has a generative AI. Like that is now part of everything. I talked to someone last week who said they were getting ready to deploy a non-generative AI like chatbot, and then the C-suite came back and said, no, hold up, make it generative. Like we can't just deploy a traditional AI; it has to be generative AI. So that's obviously the big buzzword. That said,
Okay.
not from a layperson's perspective, that might make sense. Like from a in terms of a buzzword, like just being able to say, hey, we have a generative AI tool.
Yeah.
But when you dig deeper, it's like, okay, well, they're not all created equally. I mean, it comes down to, what's the data it's been trained on? What's the, how is it working? And ultimately, it comes down to being able to ask the right question. Like, because I've used the example of, like the genie, and asking for your 3 wishes or whatever. And it's like you have to be careful how you phrase your question, because you might get an answer that is technically answers your question and yet doesn't.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So all of that is a very long segue into, I know J1 introduced a natural language search AI powered, part of the platform.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wanted you to, I guess, kind of talk about, the JupiterOne implementation of AI, and how
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
helps customers. How does that streamline or improve security for customers?
Yeah, well, definitely, right? So there's certainly a lot of buzz around Gen AI, but the reality is, AI has been around for a while, right? And it's just that generative AI made it more relevant for the lay person, right? So and the everyday use case of doing something, asking a question, getting some answers, or generating responses based on a prompt and things like that, right? It just made it a lot more adoptable and approachable, right? So for everyone to understand and use it. Now, and people interact in natural language, right? So natural language processing has been around for a while, and also part of AI is also machine learning, right? That has been around for a while, right? So there's a lot of things that J1 is doing that is not just limited to using Gen AI, right? So we have other things going on that hopefully that we will have product releases to share later on this year, right? But immediately, right? So leveraging Gen AI, it is to make the complex data that we have, that we previously described, all those things, or you've got millions of things and they're all connected, right? How do you make sense of it? If I have a question, naturally I want to be able to just ask that question, right? If you have the data, you answer that question, right? But before Gen AI, and what we had created is a querying interface, or like any database, right? But in this case, is a graph querying that we call J1QL. So you can query not just the data, but relationships and the context, right? So in this type of query language. Now we have also generated a library of thousands of natural language questions that we've pre-built, translate that into queries, right? So the ability to have Gen AI to understand J1QL and the data structure and the syntax and have examples of previously built questions and so on and so forth, then it just allows users to ask anything in natural language.
Yeah.
Right. So even non-technical, non-security people, right? So, my HR person can come to J1 and say, hey, how many people did we hire in California last month? It's not a security question, but we have the data, and she can ask that the question in natural language, we can give that answer back, right? So, and that's the power of J1's data combined with Gen AI and natural language processing and the questions.
Yeah.
Right? So to let people ask anything.
Well, and as you were talking about it, and I hadn't thought about this before, but it reminded me of, and I'm dating myself some, but like when I was, first started with my Commodore 64 and, playing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which, that was a text-based adventure, but even games like King's Quest or whatever. In the early days of gaming, it had a very limited vocabulary. It was, like if you had to ask the question in precisely the right way,
Right.
in order for the game to work. And so part of being good at those games was, just trying to learn, okay, what's the syntax this game understands?
Yeah.
You fast forward 5, 10, 15 years, obviously games have changed, well, now games are really, really changed, but even when you were still doing like text-based input, they evolved to the point where you could just say something, and they expanded the vocabulary of the game so that it would, if you said walk, it would give you like, it would understand that as like all of the possible connotations of the word walk, instead of having to say exactly the right thing. And I think it's a kind of a similar evolution from machine learning to AI to generative AI and natural language. Is the underlying data might still be the same data. It's just we've sort of democratized the ability to access that data, because you don't have to first learn a specific language to in order to be able to extract information.
That's exactly right. So I love the term that you use, right? So democratize the ability to access and understand that complex data, right? And that's actually part of the mantra of why I built J1, is to democratize security, so that is a quote unquote basic right for every organization, whether you have dedicated security teams or whether you have engineers who can understand how to operate security or not, right? You should be able to just ask the questions in the most natural way and get answers back. I mean, and the use cases are the same essentially, right? So if you think about, if a PCI auditor comes in and say, hey, is your data store encrypted in production in the PCI scope environment? Yeah, that's an auditor question, but it can also be an operational security question. It's just asked by a different team and different people for maybe different reasons, right? But the answers are all in the data. So if we just provide the ability for different users, different personas to ask different questions for whatever purpose and reasons, the answers are all in the data.
Well, and in terms of being able to streamline it, so not only does it democratize access, like you said, you don't have to be a security expert to query the platform. You can just ask what you want to ask and get an answer. Not only does it do that, but it significantly streamlines getting things done, because all of these things are like, no matter what question I ask, if the data's there, I could have gotten it. There was a longer way for me to get that information. I mean, once upon a time, I might have had it all in an Excel spreadsheet. I'd have to go figure out. There is a manual process that you could use to find the information that you're looking for.
Yeah.
But just being able to say, hey, how many systems do we have on the network that are running Windows 11 or whatever, and just get that answer.
That's right.
Like I said, I could find that out the hard way, or I could get that answer in 2 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why J1 is so powerful and so compelling for our customers, right? Is that, work that used to take hours and days, you can literally get the answers in seconds. And that's the difference, right? So it just feels like, you have that virtual assistant, right? So with you, for the security teams.
Yeah, I mean, for years now, I mean, we keep getting a little bit closer, but for years, what I want from AI, and I've said this about Siri in particular for years. I have to look around, make sure no devices start turning on, just because I said the word.
Yeah.
But it is, I want the experience to be more like Tony Stark talking to Jarvis in an Iron Man movie. It's like, it's not just a thing. It's not just a way to verbally interact and do Google searches, basically. I want it to be a little bit smarter than that. I want, like I said, in the case of Siri, in the case of Google, in the case of Alexa, whatever platform you choose, I want it to be like, I think it should come like one way out of the box. There's kind of the default, like this is what it looks like when it's raw, but over time it should learn me. So my Siri should be different than your Siri, should be different than my wife's Siri, because it should learn you. It knows my calendar, it knows my health stats, it knows my music preferences, and therefore when I do ask a question, I expect an answer that is much more personalized and customizable to me. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with context. It's like I want the AI to understand the context of me. And in the case of J1, it's like, as a customer, I want your AI to understand the context of my environment.
Exactly, and that's the future, right? So that's the future of AI. That's the future of J1, and that's the future of a lot of enterprise software as well, right? Is to leverage the advancement in AI to be to provide more precise, more streamlined, and personalized, right? In this case, then it's personalized based on company data, information, and business context, right? So when you ask the questions, it takes all those into account to provide the answers.
Okay. I want to switch gears slightly and just kind of broaden things out a little bit. So just like, you've been in cybersecurity for a long time. You're a founder and tech executive of a cybersecurity company. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the threat landscape today and kind of where things are going. I mean, we've had a couple high profile, things happen recently, like, with MGM. And although I will say it's interesting to me, like when you go back a couple years to like, Colonial Pipeline, and you say, okay, well, ransomware is a huge problem. It took out, oil production on the entire Eastern Seaboard. And it's like, well, okay, yes, but ultimately that kind of came down to poor identity hygiene and not cleaning up a VPN account. I mean, it's like we sort of assign these attributes to cyber attacks where we think that they're magical and mystical and they're very advanced. And most of the time it's something simple. I mean, in the case of MGM, it was social engineering, so it's like, yes, there are certainly 0-day attacks. There are certainly very sophisticated exploits out there in the world, but it seems like a lot of the highest profile attacks basically come down to poor security practices.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that's spot on. It's a great question, right? So what's the future landscape for threat, right? So I'm going to talk about this in sort of two ways, right? So one is, with the advancement and the speed that technology evolves, it certainly becomes more advanced, more complex, and more difficult to protect, right? So there's just so much going on, right? And things change all the time, and there's always something new. And now we have to think about AI attacks. How people are hacking and attacking the AI models and jailbreaking the AI guardrails and stuff like that, right? And then we have people leveraging that to do a lot more sophisticated phishing and all of those things, right? And leveraging AI to write code for malicious reasons. And there's a lot of things that are just coming at us of because of the advancement in technology and how they are being used for the malicious purposes, right? Just as with anything, right? Any technology, you can use it for good and use it for bad, right? But on the flip side, there's a lot of things that are at the basics level, at the foundational, at the hygiene level, at the, program core, business foundations, and, fundamental level that are causing these high profile breaches that we're seeing. So now what's the connection, right? So are we saying that we should just focus on the basics, or are we saying that we should ignore the, advanced stuff, right? So, but actually there's a connection, right? The reason that covering the basics and the hygienes and so on and so forth is becoming so hard isn't because we don't want to do it. It's because of the other things, right? It's because of all of these additional changes and the dynamic nature of things and the continuous evolution of things, and it's making covering the basics so hard, right? It's like if you only have 5 things to protect, yeah, I can cover the basic pretty easily. I can, do the hygienes around those 5 things pretty easily. If I only have 5 users, pretty easy, right? But if you have millions of them, and they're all, the attack surface, right, is so vast, and there's so many things, and you have thousands and hundreds of users that are touching millions of things. If you think about it that way, then the basics becomes not the basics anymore. It just becomes so hard to do those at scale.
The scale definitely it gets to be overwhelming, and in terms of, I talk frequently about the tech landscape keeps growing and evolving, as does the threat landscape, and the reality, and you just addressed this, but the reality of the tech landscape is every time something comes out that is great for me, it makes my life easier, it makes it more convenient for me, it also makes it more convenient for the attackers. Like that's right. always a double-edged sword. Like if it's easier for me to access, then it's also easier for the attackers to access.
Yeah.
Once they figure out how to compromise it, and to use a very overused saying or whatever. On the cybersecurity side, you've got to be right 100% of the time. The attackers only have to be right once. You've got to protect everything all the time. And as an attacker, I only have to find one weak link to get in.
Yeah, but that's also not entirely true, though, right? Because it's also a sequence of events that leads to the bigger attacks, right? So it's not just that one person failed and click on a link, right? But it's not just that one event. It's a sequence of things that leads to a bigger eventual compromise, right?
True.
So I think then going back to the basic, right, and going back to all these evolutions, right? So then I think a lot of times we have this tendency of saying, hey, what's the next gen tool to address this next gen challenge, right? And I think it's not just that. I think a lot of times, we have to go back and not just be so reactive and say, what is the better version of X, right? Not just doing things better, but doing things differently, right? So that's again, going back to J1, this is why I built J1, and this is why I think a lot of people who understand it sees the tremendous amount of potential, but then there are people who hasn't really got to that point of understanding what that is, right? Is that we need to look at the basics differently, right? So because what we're doing with J1, with asset, with visibility, and all of those is not new, is not sexy necessarily, is not the AI this or the GPT that, right? So stuff like that. But it really is rethink about how you build a program around scalable basics, right? And how do you think about changing a security function from a policing and blocking function to a enabling and wellness function? And what is that fundamental platform or tool or data that you need to support that program, not just to support that singular use case, right? So I think we need to make program level changes in order for this to really get to the next level Otherwise, we're always just going to be slap one more thing on, one more band-aid on, and continue to be reactive to things.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, even in the case of Colonial Pipeline or MGM, is like there were obviously weak links, and attackers figure out how to exploit those weak links. But when you go to the next level, you have to say, okay, but what else was missing from your process, or what else was missing from your network to allow that one weak link to blow up into this whole other thing? It's like, just because I let you in the door doesn't mean I need to let you blow the whole house up. Exactly. There is a chain reaction of things, and I also, when I was on the other side of the fence, when I was in working as a security architect, I would go into clients, and it might be after they had suffered an attack, and the first thing is always, okay, well, now that we've had this attack, we've got budget. What do we need to buy to fix this? And I would always kind of come in and say, well, hold on, let's understand what you have already. Like, because you've already got tools in place that maybe could have done the job. Like just buying a new tool isn't going to solve your problem, because it always comes back to, basic security practices and that, the good old fashioned 80-20 rule, where it's like, if you just did these things right, you would eliminate 80% of the problems. And then you can go find what shiny new tool you need for the other 20%.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about that for a second, right? So, because, what I'm going to say is, it sounds counterintuitive, right? So it feels like in order to prevent or detect and block these next-gen attacks, like what happened with Colonial, what happened with MGM, and this next wave of AI-driven things and so on and so forth, you need to focus on the advanced next-gen stuff, right? Naturally, it feels that way, right? But I think it's the opposite, right? Because the reason is you have limited resources and team and budget and all of those and time. You spend so much time focused on the noise because you don't know what's the noise and what's real, what's the advanced stuff, right? So, if we have the technology and tooling to take care of the basic stuff, the mundane and the noisy stuff, so that we can actually allow the smart people that you do have to focus on the 20% or the 2%, and not just think about, I need this magic bullet for that 20% and the 2%, right? Think about, you want the magic bullet, you want the technology to solve the 80%, so you can focus on the 20%, but not the other way around.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you try to, when organizations try to do it the other way around, that's how you end up getting in trouble. Like if you think that just buying the new fancy silver bullet is going to solve your problem, that's how you get into trouble.
Exactly, right. So unfortunately, we see that a lot in the industry, right? So we see that, because a company like us had this attack, and it's because of this type of threat, then I need the next generation XDR, then I need the next generation whatever, right? But instead, nobody is saying that, oh, I should spend more money on these fundamentals of, I don't know, asset visibility, or building a stronger program, or enabling my people to, prioritize better and, sift through the noise in a faster and more efficient way, right? And then I all of a sudden magically get a budget for this next gen shiny tool, but I continue to neglect the foundations of the program, then you're never going to get there. You might have some, immediate ROI that it seems to make everybody feel better, but the reality is, in the long run, it doesn't really change the nature of the program.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see kind of how things, the cybersecurity industry seems to be very cyclical. I mean, it expands and then contracts. We seem to be going through some sort of a contraction. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions and such that seem to be going on. And I also see I see increasing overlap between what are separate segments. So you've got people over here talking about identity, security, and privilege access management. People over here talking about, next gen zero trust and zero trust architecture, and people over here are talking about exposure management and exploitability. And it's like, okay, well, there's a Venn diagram where all three of those things are kind of the same thing.
Yeah. You're noticing the very key trend, right? So I think the industry is realizing that as well, right? So I think it goes back to the reason for that happening is security catching up to IT and the digital transformation and the changes and the new technology that's coming up, right? So in order to address that the quickest way possible, then something else comes out to react to that need from a security standpoint, right? Tech goes here, needs protection, security goes here and protect it, right? But then over time, it's created this dynamic of a lot of silos and overlapping. And I think as an industry, we're seeing the need to consolidate. You see the M&A is happening. You see the platform nature of focus, right? So there's aggregations, there's consolidation from tech, from companies, right, from capabilities. Right? I do believe that is the continued trend, and that is the right way to approach it, right? And again, going back to what we've been saying a lot, right? At the end of the day, it's all about having the right data, doing the right analysis, and having them come together. Yeah. So there are controls at the individual controls level, very close to where the problem is, right? So maybe it's phishing detection, right? Maybe it's next-gen firewall. Maybe it's a better encryption technology. Maybe it's MFA, right? So those are the core controls at that technology and the implementation of that problem specifically space, right? But then in order for all of those to work well together and understand it and apply the right policies and the right prioritizations, then they all have to come together, and that's where the consolidation becomes.
Yeah. All right. As we, I guess, sort of start to wind down, but I wanted to find out if there's anything you can share in terms of what's on the horizon for JupiterOne. Is there, anything coming up in the, in the next quarter, in the next, year?
Well, I think that we continuously come out with new improvements, innovations, and so on, right? So I think for the most foreseeable future, we want to focus on enterprise scale, and we want to better support our customers, and we want to be able to collect and aggregate more data in a more complete way, and we want to be able to continue to leverage AI to drive ease of use. And you also mentioned things around vulnerability management. We have a lot of customers using J1 for those type of use cases, right? So we want to continue to invest in those specific use cases that drive actual more actions on top of the data that we have on the platform, right? So those are a lot of the blocking and tackling of scaling the business and supporting our customers.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else on your mind, or we can wrap up? But sometimes I'll throw out the we can talk about Star Wars versus Star Trek. We can talk about Marvel versus DC. Whatever floats your boat.
Oh no, I'm good. This has been a super fun conversation, right? So I would instead of the pop culture stories, I probably invite everybody to check out the actual customer stories of J1 on our website, right? So we have amazing stories from Auth0, Okta, SecureWorks, and Databricks, and many others, right? So that you can actually see how others have transformed their security program, right? Okay. I'd love to invite the audience to check it out. And Tony, this has really been a fun conversation.
Thank you. And I will link to that in the blog post that goes with the podcast. So I'll link to some of those resources. And I also want to, I already wrote about this, but I just want to take the opportunity to emphasize that I'm a huge fan of the whole the data heist concept, just because I think it's an innovative, engagement. It's like, I've been to 15 years of black hats and RSAs. I've been to all of the cocktail parties and eaten all of the hors d'oeuvres. And every once in a while there's an event that stands out as okay, but that's different. That's a fun and engaging way to bring people in and have conversations. And so
Cool. Kudos to Valerie, who runs my events on the marketing team and the entire marketing team, right? So there's a lot of creativity and thoughts that went into that. And you're right. And it was the same. I've been to all of those events, and after a while, they all look and feel the same. And we wanted to bring something a lot more fun, engaging, and unique, right, to the community.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Sounds good. Well, have a good one, Tony.
I appreciate you investing your time to listen to the podcast, but I also invite you to engage on social media. Please go like our Facebook page and follow @TechSpective on Twitter and Instagram. You can feel free to let me know what you like, let me know what you don't like, let me know if you love it, let me know if it sucks, and let me know what products you'd like to see reviewed or what questions you'd like to see answered in future posts.